price discourse is happening in the Yugioh community, and it is not the same as it usually is. Today, we're going to be looking at this new type of price discourse that is happening in the Yugioh community, but it is not really price discourse, but you'll see what I mean. Let's get into it. Thank you to CityCatLover68 and 65 for joining the membership. And here we are on Yugioh Twitter. The best place for discussions, right guys? Dyer has posted, what's the disease Yu-Gi-Oh players have, where if you try to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh from a game design perspective, half of the people are like, yeah, but you know what will fix that? Making the game cheaper. No, we want to make the game cheaper, but that's not what we're talking about right now. So what Dyer is saying here is that people bring up pricing discourse when it doesn't have to do anything with the conversation, which, yeah, a lot of people do this in the community. I have seen it a lot, where people would say, oh, I really like the Fiendsmith cards because it gives us new lines, and they're like, oh, but the price is this much, and if for some reason it's not accessible. Yes, yeah, that's true. So right off the bat, it does sound reasonable to think that, oh, we're talking about game design, price isn't always the solution for that, because most of the time when talking about just a format in general, people do think about it as a whole, with people already owning the cards, which of course isn't the case, but we'll get into that. So Farfa replied, I don't agree with this. Game design and product design are somewhat intertwined. How a box is being sold is related, example, power creep. There's also a psychological angle of people being more biased in balanced discussions if they can actually afford the cards, which I do feel is reasonable as well, because if you think about this as a perfect format where everyone has the cards, it's clearly not the case. There will be people who won't own Molcharvi, they won't own the Dominus Impulse or Purge. It's an interesting concept already, for the fact that you don't really have a good idea of how the format will be, since it depends on people's financial situations. Of course, for this part, the solution to that is that if the cards were accessible to everyone, as crazy as that sounds, that is the case, which is so funny. I get the point that Farfa is making here, but I cannot say that like Dyer is wrong or Farfa is wrong in this case. So I've been playing Alestros for a while, and this is not a plug, by the way, but anytime I play a premiere event, which is pretty much like a big event in Alestros, I have a good idea of what I'm going to go against, because a lot of the people, like a 90%, are going to have the cards, since the cards are affordable and easy to get. So I already know, oh, I'm probably gonna go against this deck, like most of the time. In Yu-Gi-Oh, if you go into an event, let's say you go into an event where like you don't recognize your region too much, you're just gonna like look into, oh, okay, so these events did this well with like Ryzeal, this well with Maliss, and you go into this event, you're gonna find a lot of people who just like either are not playing Ryzeal or Maliss because they can't afford it, and the players that are currently like, doing really well are playing those decks. And I'm not saying there is an advantage, because there are people who do pick up those decks and just do awful with them. Like, I've seen them. I've played a bunch of locals. For most of the videos I've done when it comes to like making top in a local with Pendulum, is people that do not know how to play their decks, which is really funny. But anyways, so you can't get a good read on what decks people are going to be playing because of that. So you'd say that it is unbalanced for that reason, which I think makes complete sense in that case. But one thing I have to say about this Farfa's like disagreement is the fact that this is not what the post is about. Here we go. Here comes Dyer's response. Absolutely disagree. For example, Dragon Master Magia being in QCR only clouded any discussion on if the card was actually good or not, with everyone deciding, well, it must be good, it says negate and it is expensive, not engaging with the design and talking about how it's trash. Yes. This is actually very true. A lot of people did not want to talk about how good Magia actually was, and a lot of people were blindly going into trying to get Magia, but the fact that, oh, it's a negate for Blue Eyes, and it's, you know, I haven't tested it, but it's that expensive, so it makes sense, right? Because it is only a QCR for some reason, so yeah, it should be really good. And now we're going into Primite and Blue Eyes after the structure that comes out, and it's nowhere to be seen. Nobody's playing Magia and OCG, and if there is, it's very rare. It's just really funny. So yeah, that's a good example from Dire, definitely. So before we move on to the other responses, let's take a look at this video. So I don't know if you guys remember the mid-core Yu-Gi-Oh player discussion from Team APS. Josh made a 1-hour reaction with Farfa having a 2-hour reaction to it. But this is reacting to Josh's reaction, and now I'm reacting to Farfa's reaction to Josh's reaction to the Team APS video. The loop continues. Josh says this, which is very similar to what we're dealing with right now. And I do want to point out that this video will be in 2x speed on Josh's end, because that's how Farfa put it. So get ready.
Personally, I'm not in everyone's shoes. I don't experience it the same way that other people experience it. And I feel kind of bad just ignoring it and just saying like, hey, can't we just enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh ignoring the price? Because the price is a big deal for a lot of people, and I understand that. And it's completely fair enough to not want to spend the money on Molchami Pubalas. At the same time, I do not like the fact that like some people look at Yu-Gi-Oh just through that lens and nothing else. The way I look at Yu-Gi-Oh is just, I look at it.
Holy shit. You did not just say what I think you said.
At the same time, I do not like the fact that like some people look at Yu-Gi-Oh just through that lens and nothing else. The way I look at
I do not like that some people look through the lens of Yu-Gi-Oh is too expensive and nothing else. That is the reality for some people. What do you mean? For some people, that is the deal-breaking part of the game.
Okay. Yes, this is a deal breaker for a lot of players, and a lot of people will use this as the excuse to be like, I don't want to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Period, pretty much. Or anything that is currently happening in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, period. Which I do not think is correct, but I completely understand being completely like demotivated to talk about something for the fact that, oh, this card I can't afford. Why would I be talking about it if I'm never going to obtain it unless it gets reprinted? Like, why would I want to think about it until it gets reprinted? Which isn't the correct way to think about it, since let's say you can play another deck. In this case, you still want to find out what the cards do, what's the design behind them, and be able to kind of get an idea on what they're going to do in the format. Or even just learn how the cards work to see what kind of cool things it could do. Even if you don't own them, we have simulators that are able to just like, you know, play with them. And even though we, like, you know, you can play with friends, or you could, like, you know, play with yourself. Or playing an online ranked ladder, that works as well. I do understand wanting to play the game at pay per play. I completely understand. I wish I could play pay per play, though currently Yu-Gi-Oh is not just pay per play only anymore. So we have a lot of things we can talk about like, oh, the current format, this is how it's working out, you know, mention the, you know, Ryzeal, Maliss, all the different versions of those decks, and the amount of cool stuff that you could do with them. And without just saying, oh my god, like Maliss costs this much, and end the conversation, or Ryzeal costs this much, end the conversation. It's like, no, like, don't do that. I feel like you should bring up the pricing, but as a, oh, I wish I can afford these, or etc., or wish it was more affordable. I completely understand that, though. Don't let that take over the entire conversation, because that's what a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players do. Talk about what the card could potentially do for the format. Let's say they release a new card, let's say a new hand trap, and everyone's reaction is instantly, oh, this is gonna cost so much money. Like, yeah, but like, can we talk about like what the handshake could do potentially for the format, what effect will it have, etc. Because let's go back to Mo Charmy Fuolas back when that was announced. A lot of people were freaking out about the effect, yes. Though people were freaking out also about the price. So the fact that there was this 50-50 people only talking about the price and the other people only talking about what the card does for the format at release, where we didn't even know if it was going to be a secret rare or not, because this was back in when it was announced in OCG. It's kind of crazy. So I completely understand Dyer's argument for this, and Josh's argument, I guess, in this case as well. God, this feels parasocial. We are back on Yu-Gi-Oh! Twitter. TVPS says, I'm mixed on this. Yu-Gi-Oh! Game design is fascinating to discuss with friends, but we can't ignore that price is an impediment for most players. They likely want to be a part of the conversation, but find it difficult when they are unable to play the very cards being discussed. Dyer responds, there's a time and place when price should be brought up. Not every conversation needs to involve everyone. If I'm talking about card design and someone says, this doesn't matter, I can't afford it, why be part of the conversation in the first place if you aren't adding in anything new? Which is because of online discourse. It's like, even before reading anything else, it's just online discourse, the situation here. So TAPS response, I think this is a consequence of online discourse, for better or for worse. If a conversation is happening in a stream or social media thread, people will view it as an invitation to weigh in with opinions related or not, because it's just how we've collectively been wired. Then response, to be clear, I agree with you. I just found that it's easier to discuss most of my real Yu-Gi-Oh! Opinions on game design and card theory among a small private group of friends, of people I trust to engage faithfully. The broader internet is the Wild West. Yep. It's just a lot of people who want to yap, realistically. They want to just weigh in their opinion, and even if they don't know too much about the topic, they will just do that. So in these scenarios, you will often get people who are just going to knock down your entire conversation by just mentioning the fact that, oh, this card's super expensive, why should I care about it? That's it. It's like, okay, then why are you here? Like, you don't have to be part of this conversation. We're just talking about how cool an interaction of this card is, or what this card can potentially do for our format. We're not talking about price. The only scenario that I think you should be completely fine with only complaining about the price, and that's it, is when the conversation is about complaining about the price. For example, let's say one of the many posts I've done complaining about the price of a card. Yeah, you can complain there. Go ahead. I'm not gonna judge, because I'm complaining about the card price. You complain about the card price. Go ahead. Yeah, pop off. Like, price can be related, but you don't have to just knock down the entire conversation because of that. For my final thoughts on this topic, if you're someone that goes up to someone looking for an interesting conversation about card design or what the card can do potentially for the format, and just say, oh, the card is too expensive, this card should be more affordable, and just end the conversation outright, you're lame. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. Just do it where everyone else already does it, which is the Konami replies on social media, because they constantly post about like, oh, check out this card, you want to get this card. It's like, oh yeah, the card's like 150 bucks. Okay, great Konami. And just like, complain, give your complaints. It is a company that you are a customer from. You can give your critiques to them. It is completely fine. And also, if you're a content creator and you just see someone replying like this, just ignore them. Like, out of mind. But yeah, tell me your thoughts about this. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't, and like the video as well. And let's go!